Thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. We have been covering healthy things, and I call them healthy beliefs and healthy habits of a Christian marriage. Today we're going to focus on healthy belief number 3. A healthy marriage exists when both persons hold a healthy definition or model for marriage. A healthy marriage exists when both persons hold a healthy definition or model for marriage. See, definitions matter. A definition of a word gives its limits. It tells us what a word or expression can mean. This means that no other meaning is right. And that way, definitions are like molds. If I cram a clump of clay into a mold, whatever doesn't fit is cut off. When I was a kid, I had Play-Doh, and when you weren't eating it or licking it, you pushed it inside of different molds. You could smash into things, and of course, you'd have excess, and you'd have all kinds of shapes and whatnot, and whatever it was. Well, that's what I think of that when it comes to definitions or molds. Now, why do you cut off? Because the mold gives the parameters or limits to the Play-Doh. The mold gives parameters or limits to the clay if you're making something else, a pot, a brick, or whatever. The clay will always make whatever the mold is. Always, always, always. If the mold is a toy train, then the clay will mold into that shape. That's how it is. Definitions are like that. Humans always define themselves. They define themselves, they give themselves molds. And these definitions, these molds, are powerful. They tell us what we, quote, mean in life or what our purpose is. Just like a definition tells us what a word means, definitions, when humans define things, they tell us what we mean in life or what our purpose is. They're also like molds. We always live to the potential of how we define ourselves or what mold we put ourselves in. We always do that. We always live up to how we define ourselves or what mold we put ourselves in. Always. This is exactly how humans work. What you believe about yourself is enormously influential on how you see yourself, how you think, how you behave, what you expect, what you put up with, all kinds of things. It's very much influenced by how you define yourself, what you think your mold is, what your limits is. So this is the difficult one. It's abstract, maybe a little more than the other ones, but it still is very powerful. So here's one way to get at it, to think, how do I define myself? Sometimes it's easy by starting with extremes. So finish this sentence. I will always be. What is it? I will always be. Now, you might have said something positive. You might have said something negative. You might list one thing and can come up with nothing else. Some of you can come up with 12 things. If you say something positive, good for you. I will always be healthy. I will always be a learner. I will always have character. I will always be a prayer warrior. I will always be carefree and never worry about anything. Many, many, many people don't finish the sentence with something positive. They finish with something negative. They really do. And you might not have ever thought about it before, but in counseling, it's very common. I know a woman I worked with who, one of the last things she said to me, because she was retiring, she ended up working again anyway, as most people do, but at the time she was retiring. And we were talking about stuff, and she'd always had boundary problems, limits on. She always tried to rescue people and felt responsible for everyone else's feelings and state of being all the time. And I remember her saying specifically, I'll always be that woman with the boundary problems. I'll always be that woman with the boundary problems. And that was a very clear insight into how she defined herself or what her mold was, which means she's going to live up to that. She will live into that. You might have finished your sentence with this. I will always be, or maybe you didn't, but when I say this, it might ring true with you. I will always be stressed out. I'll always be sad because of what happened. I'll always be hopeful. I'll always be plagued with boundary problems. I'll always be the good boy or good girl. I'll always be the slut. The person who just sleeps around. I know I ought not to, but I will. I'll always be the cheerleader. I'll always be the best friend. I'll always be the supporting actor. I'll always be the loser. I'll always be the coach. I'll always be the successful leader, on and on. And these are definitions. And if you have never thought about it before, okay, that's fine. But it doesn't mean you don't believe it. And I think I've done podcasts on this before, but I'm going to talk about this a lot here in just a moment. But we do have beliefs about ourselves that whether you think about them or not, we have them. Now, if you sit in, I will always be, that's your mold. That's how that's your definition of yourself. It can be long or short, destructive or healthy, Christian or unchristian. And I'm going to come back in a second, but this is what happens in marriage. And so I'm going to come back in just a second, but these definitions are powerful. If you grew up with a toxic relationship with your parents, maybe a parent was an addict, had a serious disorder, alcoholic, abusive in any kind of form, shape, or fashion, your definition of mold for yourself is probably unhealthy. Probably. If you were molested, if you were taken advantage of, if you felt dominated as a kid all the time, your definition is probably unhealthy. You probably define yourself. People who are molested tend to define themselves, I'll always be at other men's pleasure. I'll be at their disposal. Typically, if it's a female, guys can think the same thing if they've been molested. They might think, I'll always be ugly. I'll always be attractive because mama always talked about how beautiful I am. I'll always be nothing more than an image. I'll always nothing more than a nerd. I'll always be the person who doesn't get people. In other words, at some point you were wounded as a child, it's very likely that you define yourself in a negative way. Or think of it this way. If your definition was fairly negative, it probably comes from your past wounds. And these wounds develop into things, of course, the powerful beliefs. I cannot overemphasize the importance of analyzing our beliefs. And this is very difficult to do if you're not used to it, but it gets easier. And my first major point right now is these definitions, these molds are very powerful because they limit what we do in life. And they give parameters to how well or how poorly you perform in life. If you think you're a powerful, strong worker, you're going to do well. You'll work hard. If you think you're lazy, you're going to be lazy. I mean, on and on it goes. Now, I'm going to come back to marriages in a second. First, before I do the marriages, I want to pause on this issue because individuals struggle with this so much. You bring it into the marriage. So let me go to my second major point here, and this I want to stay with me because it's all related. These definitions are based on beliefs, like I said, and if yours is negative, it's probably because you were wounded as a child. That's where most of our beliefs come from, is from childhood. Now, well, David, okay, well, great. Well, what if these beliefs in me, I don't want them? What if they're false? What if they're true? Okay, first I want to make sure you understand something, because this is absolutely very, very common. I cannot over-articulate how common this is in counseling. People do not understand this, and I'm not making fun of them. I'm saying this is a very common little argument I have with people because they live in denial, and then when they finally see it, they go, "Oh, this is basic in psychology. This is like psychology 101." But when you tell people this, the common folk, this is earth-shattering, which is fine. But there's what makes it amazing to me is people almost always give pushback on this as if it's just not true. And there's a lot of reasons why, not just because they're know-it-alls. It's usually a defensive mechanism, and if I remember, I'll tell you why. But first, you need to understand that what you think, you can think something in a definition and still feel sadness, fear, anger, rage, it's hatred, whatever. Now, why is that? Because you still believe in the proposition. You can think something in a definition, but you still feel something else. The reason why that is because you believe something else. Let me say it this way. You can say you intellectually concur with the proposition. That is a truth statement inside of a propositional claim. So you can intellectually concur with something, the truth content of a propositional claim, while simultaneously, really deep down, you believe something else. Our feelings follow what we believe. And here's the last part of that thought, and this is what people disagree with so often. So saying I understand is not the same as saying I believe. They're just simply not the same thing. You can understand it all day long and not believe it. It goes like that. When I tell people, particularly people have high developed defense mechanisms because they either are very wounded or they feel very ashamed of their anxiety or their OCD or their addiction. And if it brings something, they go, I know I ought not do it. I know I shouldn't. I might go, okay, then why do you do it? Well, I know. No, the point is I can chase that rabbit hole for a second. I know the answer is not because they're ignorant on what they shouldn't be doing. That's not why. It's not because they don't know why they shouldn't, that they shouldn't be doing it. It's not a knowledge issue. Is that they believe that what they're doing has a payoff. And if I said that to them right off the bat, which usually you can't, because most people, if they have, again, a highly developed defense mechanism, unless they're just genuine narcissists, but most people don't. Most people have a developed defense system because it hurts so much. If I just go, oh, no, that you don't, it's not just you know that, I believe that you know it, you just don't believe it. They're going to go, yes, I do. No, here's a common one, particularly amongst females, but not only, it's not exclusive, but it tends to be the case. Typically, females, usually around adolescence, start really, really challenging their sense of self-value and self-worth. It's a very common stage in life, and almost like a rite of passage, unfortunately, but it's a stage in life that tends to happen. Probably has a lot to do with hormones and all the stuff, but it's a very massive switch for most females where they don't care much at all. They'll dance around like a lunatic in the middle of a grocery store, but then all of a sudden, like almost overnight, they care deeply about what other girls think about them. And don't do that, Mom and Dad. Don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me. That they use words like embarrassment or embarrassing or that's awkward for the first time in their entire lives. And if parents don't help them through this very difficult, tumultuous time in their lives, they won't stop doing that to various degrees. I know many adult women who never got out of that stage. They never stopped at that stage ever. They grew up all their lives and it never stopped. They end up comparing or contrasting themselves for females the rest of their entire lives. And that all started when they were little girls and they never developed the skill set and the tools to stop doing that, to not let hormones and those fears cripple them. Because when the hormones and these other, not to mention just if it's nurtured, if people around them actually do say that, if moms and dad go, oh my goodness, what would people think if they saw you in that? And they teach them that embarrassment is something you should value very, very much. Well, they never get out of it. Instead of learning the skill set to process that anxiety, the skill set to say, I don't make decisions based on whether or not people like me, they just grow up the rest of their lives. Then what happens is by the time they see me, typically as an adult, then what happens is when we start working on counseling, they might say, if at some point down in the conversation I say, if you're a Christian, your value really is found because God the Father, Son, and Spirit say they value you. And they're going to go, I know. But they don't believe it. I'll say, if I were to say, and sometimes I have, again, not much anymore because I learned pretty early on that the defensive mechanism is so high. The defense mechanism is so high. They're going to say, I don't tell them they don't believe it. I said, well, no, you don't. Yeah, I do. So end up arguing. Yeah, I do. I know. I believe it. I believe my identity is in Christ. Sure. I believe that. Like, no, you don't. If you really did, it would change the way you feel. It would change the way you feel. Think of it this way. That's one of many, many, many examples I could give you where people, it comes up all the time in normal behavior people. And so there's different ways in counseling to get a person, you basically have to get around it. You have to have them get down to the place where they identify it themselves and go, now I see what you're saying. So other times I start with this, I'll give an image because I find this to be very helpful with people. It helps me as well. Imagine it inside of you and your psyche is like an iceberg. At the top part of the iceberg, that's surface level above the water. That's what you think. Those are your thoughts. And we do think something all the time. Every conscious moment, on and off, we're thinking something. I know sometimes we can doze off for a second, not really think. I'm saying, but on and off in our conscious moment. Now, even when we're dreaming, our mind can think things. But these are the things, okay, those are thoughts. Beneath the surface of the water, as it were, those are all your beliefs. And to use the words that we use in psychology, you're conscious of your thoughts. Your feelings are subconscious. They are subconscious. That is, they are occurring, even though you're not conscious they are occurring. I like to think that, and again, in nerd talk, what I like to think is I like to think of those behaviors that our body does because our brain is hardwired for survival. For example, I'm breathing and I don't realize I'm breathing until I start being conscious that I'm breathing. I have to think about breathing. But in general life, I don't think about breathing. Now, unless I'm anxious or my chest is tight and I realize, oh, wait a second, I'm having shallow breath. That's one of my problems is I tend to have shallow breath. And so I take a deep breath and to be conscious of it. But I breathe most of the time of my conscious life, never thinking about breathing. But I am, in fact, breathing. It is occurring. I blink most of my life without thinking about blinking. I got a long list of things that occur that are automatic that I am not thinking about doing. They're doing, my body is doing it for me. My brain's taking care of it. It's an autopilot. In fact, when those autopilot functions are broken in the brain, when people have serious injuries or disorders or whatnot, it's a big deal. I mean, simple motor functions of walking and so forth. Okay, that's what it's like with your beliefs. Your beliefs are working just like breathing and just like blinking all the time, even though you're not conscious of it. Your beliefs are driving your feelings. You might see, I can give you tons of examples, but if you believe there's a big bear behind you, you're going to feel scared. Your brain will send the cortisol and the adrenaline and all this fear to make sure you need to be able to get, run and get out of here. It doesn't mean, but you might, if you believe it deep down inside, no matter what someone tells you, and you say, I know there's no bear. I looked. When you ask a child, there's a boogeyman in my closet, and they go, I think I believe it and I think it. All right, let's show the closet. I look. Now I can look. They can look right at the closet and think there is, and you look, there's no one here. Okay, you're right. They're still afraid. There's still a belief that's lingering inside them. Yeah, but there's something scary. There's something worth being scared of. And it was a long list of things. You might think that a certain, well, anyway, I could spend a long time giving examples, but I won't on this issue, on this podcast. So saying I understand is not the same as I believe. Yes, they're related, but they're not the same. Back to my iceberg analogy. It's ice. It's related. It's a part of your conscious, part of the mind and your psyche, your emotional state, but they're simply not the same. Okay, so what really matters in your definition of yourself and the mold of yourself is based on the beliefs you have, not just the thoughts you have, but the beliefs and the thoughts. And this is where it can be difficult because they are subconscious. And what takes time, but you can get good at it if you want to get good. Maybe you don't. Maybe listen to podcasts like I don't give a rip because right now you're still disagreeing with me. You're still saying no. I understand. I'm loved by Christ. I'm valued by Him. But yet nevertheless you still have to put on 14 pounds of makeup, and you still put a bunch of selfies on Facebook, and you still have to contract yourself every time you see a skinny girl. Or someone just has other features. Maybe you're skinny, but she has bigger breasts. Or maybe your hair different. Maybe your hair long enough. Oh, if you're a guy, you do the same thing. Whatever. The point is, you don't really believe it. You think your value is being prettier than, or at least as pretty as that person. But you don't really believe it. They're different. And so what's going to help you if you want to change your beliefs is you need to start writing them down. If you can pause and sometimes you have to work backwards and say, okay, I'm feeling anxious or I feel nervous or whatever. Why do I feel that right now? You want to get to the place where, and this is a lot easier if I walk you through it as your counselor, but you get to the place where you write in a journal, I believe, and you write it out. Now, what you might write down might appall you. It's very common at this stage when people come back to me after I've had this homework assignment, come back and they say, sometimes they're crying. Sometimes they're just shocked. Sometimes they're incredulous. And they just go, I cannot believe I believe those things. But once I started writing it out, and I always tell them, once you write it out, read it and see if it resonates with you. Does it ring? You go, yeah, that is exactly what I believe. Or no, we'll keep trying. But when you finally get it and it resonates with you, some people are shocked these things are deep inside them. They're beneath the water in the iceberg. But you've got to do it. And the reason why is because those beliefs are beneath the surface. The way to change the beliefs is you've got to get them to the top of the iceberg. You have to think about your beliefs. You have to think about your beliefs. Then when you do that, once you write these things out, you want to identify a correlating feeling or behavior with that belief. And that's usually can be easy. It gets easier, but my heart starts racing when I get around so-and-so. Why is that? I guess because so-and-so fussed at me last time. I guess I believe so-and-so will fuss at me again. So you'll see the correlation. And those things go together. Well, usually what happens, a little footnote, when people come to me in counseling, they'll, what's going on? I don't know. I just feel so nervous all the time. Why are you nervous? That it was most people don't know why they feel the sensations they feel. And that's why they come to me, or they go to any counselor and say, I need to figure out why is it I can't sleep at night? Why do I struggle with this addiction? Why do I struggle with reliving the past? Why is my mind racing all the time? Why can't I calm down? Why am I nervous? Why do I worry? Why do I like to sleep around? Why do I like to whatever? Why? And then there's going to be a correlating behavior, belief. There will be at least one, maybe multiple ones. And almost always, I already told you this, almost always those beliefs come from childhood. Well, praise Jesus, you can stop and you can change those false beliefs. So on your journal, you write on the left side, as it were, I don't care what side you put it on, but you put false beliefs. On the right beside it, you put a correlating true belief. You put one that's actual. You'll usually know false beliefs are false because, first off, when you read them, they'll sound false. They'll sound stupid. They'll like, that's nonsense. I mean, and if you have a hard time saying the nonsense part of it, imagine someone else telling you that. Someone else said these things. In other words, sometimes just your intuition, your gut, your mind says, "Oh, that's just false." Sometimes that's enough to say it's false. Another time, it helps you to see something that's false. Is you'll know that it's generalized. Now, I can go long list of things. Generalized means something like it happens all the time. It always is the case that I get nervous around people. I never speak well. I am never, just the day I heard this guy, he's becoming a fairly well-known interviewer for Christian apologetics. It's called Capturing Christianity. And he had his brother on who's an atheist, but the guy who does the podcast is a Christian. And the atheist brother was saying that he's not very good at his words and articulate. And the brother said, "Yeah, we're not very articulate." And the brother said, "Yeah." And I thought, that's a definition. They claim we are not articulate. I thought, well, get better at it. But the point is, that's what they believe about themselves, so they'll live up to that definition. But I would put that out. So my point is, that's a generalization. It's like saying, I will never be good at speaking well. So it's that sometimes if something's generalized, you'll see that's a false belief. It is. I'll always be is almost all. If it's negative, it's almost always wrong. I'll always hurt because of what happened. Anyway. So usually look for generalizations. That can be a sign of a false belief. Catastrophizing, something becomes a catastrophe. I'll never get over him. I'll never get over her. That event, losing my job, ruined my life. You can go on for a long, of all different ways. And there's good books on this and maybe even good blogs, I'm sure, that talk about. So there's different ways to spot false beliefs. But you want to write beside a true belief. It's true that some people can't be trusted, but some people can be trusted. It's true that I have been hurting but it's also true that I just haven't grieved enough to get the grief out of me. It's true that sometimes things do go badly, but not everything goes badly all the time. So you test it. Is it true that it's always or never or all those kinds of things? If I believe that I'm valuable as long as I'm pretty. Your true belief is, no, I'm not. I'm valuable because God says I'm valuable. When the designer of the universe says I'm valuable, that's it, period. I mean, it's nice. It's healthy and good when someone we love says they value us. That's great. I mean, that's great. It makes me feel good or I feel good when my wife says she values me or she loves me. Great. I mean, that really is good. But that's not where my value comes from. But it's nice to hear it. But some people don't have that. Some people don't feel valuable until they excel. They're not valuable until they're the best at the corporation. They're the best bodybuilder. They're the most beautiful, the smartest. They have to beat other people before they're valuable. That's a very, very false belief that you're not valuable until. In Christianity, that's false. Now, if you're a pagan, if you're just a evolved chimp, maybe that's how y'all roll, because maybe that's how animals that just dog eat dog roll. You're only valuable unless you're the top salesman, you have billions of dollars. I mean, in Christianity, that's just silly nonsense. I mean, you weren't made for that. That's not at all. The God of the universe, you're not valuable except when this happens. No, he just loves you then. I have 2 kids. They were valuable to me before they came out of the womb. They haven't done anything. They hadn't done their homework. They hadn't done any chores. They hadn't gotten a job. They still don't have a job. They're worthless. I'm just kidding. They don't bring home any money. But I value them the same. They don't perform for me. They were extremely, immensely, indescribably valuable to me just because they exist. And that's what God says about you and me. But David, you thought that about your children even though you knew sometimes they would fail you? Yes. Do you still feel that way even when they fail you? Yes. Because values and love is not based on that. That's how God is toward us. So, what happens, David, if I'm wrestling with these false beliefs? Well, once you've identified them, you've written them down, it's very important. And this is where typically a lot of thinker types like men, a lot of times people go, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I'll think about that. You will not heal well. You won't. You can do what you want. You don't have to trust me if you don't want to, but I guarantee you thinking about what I'm saying is not enough. You need to put it on paper. Studies demonstrate this. In fact, studies demonstrate that writing is more powerful than it is typing. But anyway, you do what you got to do. But if you can, I'd write it all out. I've done that. I've typed them up. I put them on tiny font. I've put them in my Bible. I've put them in my car. I put them on a computer screen. And I want true beliefs. So and here's what you do. Every single time that false belief, maybe there's a correlating anxiety when you're at work or you check your email or the phone, you need to go back to those false beliefs. And before you can finish the habit of running away or the false belief that comes in your mind, you need to stop it. You need to stop it. This is called stop therapy. Imagine the belief being a sentence. I believe that person will hurt me. Period. Don't get to the period. In your mind, you scream, stop, stop, stop. You might even yell it out loud. I've done that in the truck before, driving on the road. Stop, stop. You might have to say stop 43 times in a row. Stop, 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 stop. You don't want the brain to finish the habit. The loop. The false beliefs habit in your mind that it wants to get to the end period of the sentence so that it can release all the cortisol or adrenaline because you're scared or anxious or you're afraid or whatever it is, or you're sad. And you're going to stop it. And when you stop it, stop, then you replace it with a true belief. So you've got to recognize the false belief. You stop the false belief from finishing to get to the period, and then you replace it with a true belief. 3 steps. 3 steps. That's why that journaling is so important. So you're getting down beneath this water to the iceberg. You're bringing up to the conscious you, putting it on paper and go, oh my goodness, these are beliefs. The other day I was talking to a young woman who had never done this before. And the next week I talked to her afterwards. She said, I think she had like 98 false beliefs. And I said, good for you. I mean, I'm sorry for you. I'm sad for you, but I'm so glad you've done the hard work. Keep it up. If you get 1 billion, you get 1 billion. You need to get them out of the water. Make them conscious. That's how you start gaining power over them. Well, David, what if I have a belief down there that comes up that I like? Well, they're good. Keep it. Keep it. I mean, or to use a different analogy, if you're unpacking all your bags and you've been holding this baggage for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you don't have to get rid of everything in your bags. You might want to keep, the point is, but you want to put it back in the way you want to. You want beliefs you want. Many of you walk around with beliefs you got from mom and dad just because mom and dad told you so. You became a racist because your mom or your dad was racist, or your uncle was racist. You were scared of these kinds of people because of that. Because so-and-so said so, and you never challenged it. Children don't challenge things. They don't have the wisdom and wherewithal. They don't have the skills to do that. And that's okay. You learn, you and I both, okay, everyone does, we learn a whole lot of false beliefs about life because our parents taught us. Some advertently, some inadvertently. Some taught it to us because their parents taught them, and their parents taught them. And it's nonsense. It's lying nonsense. Some of you are going to have a real hard time admitting what I just said. You're going to have a real hard time admitting it because you can't see your parents as doing anything wrong. You idealize your parents. Your parents taught you probably to split, which I'll talk about later on as well. But you idealize them so much, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for you to even admit that your parents did anything wrong. Some of you right now are laughing, going, I'm fine with that. My parents are horrible. But some people have a very difficult time. Some of you are going to have a real hard time doing what I just said because you were so convinced that you've got it all figured out and you're a know-it-all, and your know-it-allness prohibits you from admitting you have false beliefs. You're such a know-it-all. Now, some people are know-it-alls because you're just a genuine narcissist. Other people are know-it-alls because they believe that's their role in life. That's their definition. Because deep down, they believe that they're not valuable or lovable unless they do know all things or they're in control of the situation. And if I ask them in a counseling session, where'd you get that from? I guarantee you I'm going to take them back to their childhood. At some point they learned from mama or daddy or something that they had to be the person in control. This is especially true when people who grew up with parents who are addicts. Because children, they become parentified as they become parents early on, and they can be scarred the rest of their entire lives, convinced that they've got to be in control of basically every person. They are responsible, everyone around them all the time. And they might live with the fear of that all the time. That's very common. Hey, let me take a quick break. Please listen carefully to these quick announcements. I'll be right back.
Do you know of any skeptics in your family, at work, or among your friends? Do you struggle with questions concerning the existence of God or the truth claims of Christianity? Has a skeptic ever challenged you with a difficult question concerning your faith? Then you need to buy Dr. Pendergrass's book, A Skeptic Challenges a Christian, on Amazon.com. You can get it in paperback or on Kindle or in audiobook form to listen to. A Skeptic Challenges a Christian is written unlike any other book. It's not boring and full of technical jargon. It reads like you're sitting down having a conversation. As one reviewer said, as a college student, I absolutely love this book. Dr. Pendergrass knows how to effectively answer a lot of the questions that my friends at school ask about my faith. This book is a great resource for theological debates and for my own personal growth. The arguments are clear and understandable. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who has questions about Christianity, wants to learn how to defend their faith, or even just wants a good read. Great book. Find out why it has a perfect 5-star rating on Amazon.com. A Skeptic Challenges a Christian. Buy your copies today. Ever wonder what God wants you to do with your money? Should I give it all away or save? What did the early church do with their money? In Dr. Pendergrass's book, Give It Away, Reflections on How Christians Use Money, you'll get 4 short, powerful lessons on what to do with money based on some key texts from the New Testament. This is a wonderful guide for study and reflection. It even comes with reflection questions that are perfect for small group discussions. Give It Away, Reflections on How Christians Use Money. Buy your copies today on Amazon.com. Do you like receiving a glimpse of the kingdom for free? Would you like to support what God is doing through these resources? Then please consider donating to David Pendergrass Ministries, Inc. today at davidpendergrass.com. There, you can also sign up to receive Dr. Pendergrass's free blog on a wide range of theological, biblical, and relationship issues. That's davidpendergrass.com.
Well, that was a whole lot about the individual self. Now, how does this relate to marriage? Well, hopefully you can see by now how it relates, which is when two individual people come into a marriage, both parties, the man and the woman, have beliefs beneath the iceberg. And both people almost always, if not always, simply do not know all the beliefs they do have, number one. 2, they surely don't know what the beliefs their spouse has yet. You will discover them. Well, no, we've dated David for a long time. Nah, you're going to learn a lot about what your spouse believes because your spouse doesn't even know him or herself what he or she believes yet. And it will affect your marriage a lot. That's the first major point, is what you believe about life will affect your marriage a lot. The second major point is you have a definition or mold or model of what marriage is. Marriages have definitions or molds. And a healthy marriage exists when both persons hold a healthy definition or model for marriage. So you might finish this sentence. My marriage is, or my marriage will always be. My marriage is supposed to be this way because my marriage is. That's how you'll know. Finish that sentence, or those sentences. And those are the two major points. You might want to tell your spouse what you believe about yourself, what your definition or model is. How do you define yourself? Ask your spouse about how your beliefs are manifested in your relationship. For example, you might ask your spouse, how do I show that this is how I perceive of myself? What do I do that demonstrates this is my mold? What behaviors do I have that demonstrate this is how I view myself? What do I do that shows this is how I view myself? Usually your spouse will tell you. And I'll use a lot of stereotypes, but this is true. Females, you can tell right away. The guy might say, "Oh, I can tell one of your definitions. At some part of your definition, your model is you're not very valuable." By how do I say this? You find a lot of value in your weight or the way you look. Well, how do I know? What do I do to show that? Well, you don't like to look in the mirror, or you like to have the lights out during sex, or you like to wear baggy stuff all the time, or when I hear you talk about yourself, it's negative almost all the time. Or you'll say, I know my butt's flabby, or don't touch that, or don't touch this, or don't touch that, or don't look at that. Oh, why did you look at me? Why did you look at me? Why did you blink? Why did you raise your eyebrow? Why did you clap? Why did you sneeze? Why did you cough? Does that mean you think I'm fat? Do you think I'm ugly? Do you think I'm fat? Do you think I'm fat? And a lot of females, a lot of men I've talked to go through the same thing with their wives. It's very common. So that's one behavior to demonstrate what the woman really does believe about herself is not at all positive. She does not have a healthy view of the value of herself. I remember years ago when I first, early on in marriage, really early on, I was working at a church, and the pastor was really, really good guy, funny guy, and he had a good sense of humor, and the pastor of discipleship at the time, she had a great sense of humor too. We were going to a conference. It's a Methodist conference. And I'm not a Methodist, but at the time they hired me anyway. And I'm not a Methodist. I wasn't then, I'm not now. But anyway, we're on the way there, and we were talking about marriage and whatnot, and we were newlyweds, and at one point talked about weight, and the woman, the discipleship pastor, was a woman, and she was a bit overweight, but they were talking about weight here and there, and I can't remember exact context. Maybe she was talking about losing weight or something, and something along those lines, and how maybe they were talking about lying to your spouse about, does that dress look good on you? Or, oh yeah, it looks great, or whatever it is. And I said, I've been thinking a lot about that too before I got married to Elaine, that I thought, do I want to spend the rest of my life lying to her if something doesn't look great on her, or do I just tell her the truth? And before I can even finish my sentence of those two options, they were in the front seat driving. He was driving, she was on the passenger, and they looked at each other in the face. They said, "You lie." And we laughed, and I went, "Ha." We all kind of laughed. It was funny. They thought that was very hilarious. And I said, "Yeah, it's funny." I said, "Well, I chose not to lie, actually. I chose to tell the truth. My hope is to tell the truth and to help disabuse her of the notion that her value is found in her weight." And they got real quiet. I said, that's been my hope. My hope is that and that's it. And I've decided in my marriage not to lie, ever. And my wife sometimes gets, she goes, "Yeah, don't ask him." But I tell her, don't ask me. And see, people hear that and go, "Oh, David must be really mean." No, not. Why do we think that telling the truth means you're mean? You know why? Because you have bad boundaries. You have a low self-esteem. People don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their feelings hurt. But you can be kind about it. You may know, "That's not my favorite color," or, "No, I think it's the best thing that looks on you," or whatever. But don't ask me from one time. And Elaine's don't always have to agree with that, but she knows it. But I also tell her, but I think most of the time, and she's not on my podcast, she'll tell you otherwise. But I think most of the time she appreciates that because she'll know exactly what I think about something if she asks me. So the point is, that's why I decided. That's one example of a kind of thing where you can ask your spouse, "What are some behaviors that I have that will demonstrate that I believe this about me?" So your definition or your model of your marriage is the conceptual framework of your marriage. It's how you label your marriage and what you expect from your marriage. Whatever it is, I guarantee that you are living out how you define your marriage, because we always live according to how we define our marriages. It's like that Play-Doh or that clump of clay. We will be shaped according to our self-imposed mold. Now, your definition or model right now probably contains some positive and some negative elements of marriage, but you get to pick the elements you'd like to keep. Just like you're about yourself, you do the same thing about marriage. And our definitions or a model of marriage, it can change over time, on purpose and on accident. And I will talk about the accident later on. There's a whole session I'm going to do about that, but they can change on purpose or on accident. Now, you can reach a level of homeostasis or basic contentment because you are living out your real definition or model of marriage. The real question is this the one that's best? Is this the one you really, really want? And if so, wonderful. Way to go. If it's not the one you really want, then you can change it. Now, these are things to help you think about it. The question's worth pondering. What do you believe about your marriage? What is your marriage supposed to be? What is your pre-made mold? Is it we're 70-30, which I already talked about my first belief. It's not supposed to be 70-30. I mean, second belief. It's supposed to be 100-100, but maybe that's what you believe. In my marriage is where my spouse completes me. Some people believe marriage is where I'm barely hanging on. My marriage is the marriage where basically we're headed to divorce. My marriage is mediocre. My marriage is a 10. My marriage is healthy or perfect. Where did you get your model or definition of marriage? Where did it come from? Another question worth pondering. Where did it come from? Did you get it from your parents? Almost everyone gets it from their parents. You live out, or you have a definition, you understand what the parameters of marriage are because that's what your parents, you saw it modeled. If there was a person, your mom or the dad was needy, you're probably going to be in a marriage someone's needy. You might be the needy person. If someone bickered with the other person like a critical parent, so you might be a critical parent yourself. If you're the man and your dad was a baby about everything, you might be a baby yourself. On and on it goes. Your marriage will almost always be defined by how your parents were. Where it becomes really volatile is when two people get together and their parents had very different marriages. Especially if both people came from divorced parents, maybe multiple divorce or abuse, and they have very different understandings and then you bring those dysfunctions with you. But again, you can change all this. Maybe you got your definition from grandparents. Maybe you got it from movies, maybe TV shows, maybe books, maybe a cultural archetype somewhere else. But many people, and you probably are this, you're either parroting, that is, you're just like a parrot, you're just repeating, or you're rebelling against some model. Most people are either parroting or rebelling against some model. I remember I met a guy I counseled for a little bit. He was a Chinese guy, a very nice guy and smart and whatnot, but he had some self-esteem issues, and his wife was super, super quiet, and he had bad anger issues. And we were talking about the anger issues, and because he was a Chinese background, I asked him, I was trying my best when it came to in his marriage. I certainly didn't want to put any kind of American values onto him, but at the same time, I understood that it's healthy. There's certain things that are just simply healthy, and I try my best all the time that I don't have there's not a white marriage and a Asian marriage and whatever. At least not in my view, there's not. I mean, there's healthy and unhealthy, but then there are cultural things that you're just used to doing, and I understand that. I mean, they're just things that there are cultural things that just might be cultural, that may not be healthy or unhealthy. They're just idiosyncrasies. And anyway, this man had a problem with anger, outrage, and burst, and he would just blow. And I was shocked to hear that, because he was a real quiet guy, nice guy. And I said, we talked it all through. But at one point, I asked him, "Where do you get that from? Where did you learn about being a husband? Where did this idea come from?" And at some point, we finally he never thought about it. And he goes, think about it. TV shows, when they argue, they always yell. There's always a time where the man yells and raises his voice and starts screaming. He kind of smiled, kind of laughed at himself, but he realized it was kind of like, oh my goodness. But that was it. That's where he learned it from. And you might think that's silly, but this happens all the time. It's just so subtle sometimes we don't realize where we're picking up on. Where did you get yours from? Another thing is, if you have children, you are teaching your children what marriage looks like. You are teaching your children how to define marriage and what the mold is. So, do you want your definition of marriage? Or for yourself? And who says it's right? Why or why not? What will you do to embrace your new definition of your model of marriage? What do you want in life? I mean, think about that for a second. So, two major things. One is, just repeat and I'm done. One is, you have definitions of model about yourself, and the way you see yourself absolutely influences the kind of decisions you make in life and your behavior. It's chiefly based on beliefs, which are subconscious. They're beneath the surface. And the way to get to those is you need to journal, work on usually thinking about some kind of feeling that's associated, and you work backwards to figure out what you believe, write it down, decide if you like the belief. If it is a false belief, then when you feel or even start thinking about those things in life, because you can think more about feelings when they become conscious of them, you're going to stop it and replace it with a true belief. And the more you think about it, the more it'll go back down into the water, and then you don't have to think about it all the time, because it becomes just a true belief. And you'll just live with it all the time. But you want to be conscious of it, usually, to change it. And so that's what you do. So you have a definition of yourself. It's influenced by your beliefs. Your beliefs are subconscious, and you can get at them and change them if you want. You might need a therapist. You might need a counselor. You might need someone to help you think these things through. That's fine. Great. Wonderful. Find someone to help you think it through. I mean, that's why I help people do the same thing. The second major point I've made in this podcast is that couples do this. Marriages do this. Marriages have definitions or molds for what they see their marriage is supposed to be. Healthy couples, healthy Christian couples have very good, healthy definitions of marriage. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, because yours can be different, but I know what mine is. I mean, you can actually compose it. Compose your thoughts, write it down. And that's a really good date night thing, really, to talk with your spouse about it and do this exercise of defining yourself. And if it's too emotional, maybe don't do it there. Bring some tissue or whatever, do it somewhere else. But really, if at some point, it's a good thing to talk about. Well, I hope this helps you. Hope the healthy belief number 3 stick in there. If you've got a lot of work with it, if this podcast resonates with you and you, my goodness, now that I see that I got all this stuff, and David, I'm so screwed up, and well, you might be screwed up in the sense that you might be wounded. But what you don't need to do as a Christian, this is very common. What you don't need to do is start condemning yourself and judging yourself for having false beliefs. Again, one more time, most of the false beliefs you and I have come from childhood. And when at childhood, we're just a victim. So when you add to woundedness condescension and judgment, you will not grow. God, the God that I know, and I may be wrong, but the God I think I know in the Bible and my own religious experience is not condemning you for having false beliefs that you didn't even know were there. He's going to help us. So bring them to him, God. Holy Spirit, please help me see beneath the water. Please help bring up these subconscious beliefs and help me not judge myself for having them. Please help me extend grace to myself and help me get to work and heal these wounds, right? It takes courage, but you can do it. And it takes grace. Try to give yourself grace. If you can't give yourself grace, I've got tips for that too, but that's not in this podcast. So maybe I can do counseling for you. Let me know. Well, anyway, God bless you. I pray this helps, and I'll see you next time. Well, the conversation isn't finished. You can always reach out to me on social media. Are you on Facebook? I am too. At Glimpse of the Kingdom. Glimpse of the Kingdom on Facebook. Be sure to like it, and you can see updates there. Also, if you're on Twitter, check me out at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass, or at Glimpse the King, at Glimpse the King. And I try my best to respond to comments and questions on there as quickly as I can. If you want more, there are many more resources on the podcast and my blog. Go to my website, davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com, and you can see a full list of the podcast, and my blog is available for free. Are you active in a church right now? I'd be happy to come out to your church and do all kinds of classes and workshops there. Check out davidpendergrass.com, davidpendergrass.com for more information. And may God in His great grace give you even just a glimpse of His kingdom this week. See you next time.